I'm curious. So obviously it's Kevin. How do I pronounce your last name? Is Rustici?
You're close. As you can imagine, Ben, I've heard pretty much anything under the sun,
Yeah.
especially when telemarketing to the home phone used to be a thing back in the day.
Right.
We always could determine like who knew us and who didn't by how the pronunciation of the last name, but it's actually pronounced Rustici.
Rustici.
Yes.
Huh.
And then I have to be different with the Y in my name. And I to this day blame my mother. I think she was a little hyped up on pain meds and wasn't thinking clearly that Kevin was actually typically spelled with an I. And therefore, I never got any pencils or license plates with my official spelling of my name. So, but yes, Rusticy.
We'll get it done. You see, I'm all flubbed up. Rustici.
You got it. Now you'll
I
never forget it.
I want to say it with like an Italian,
Yeah,
like
everybody does. I've heard like Rustisac, Rostucci. I've heard like,
Right.
and then I played sports growing up too, Ben. So like the sports announcers, like the high school and the college announcers, that was always a treat because they would come up and be like, "All right, so how do you say your last name?" And we would tell them, and I would even try to like break it down into to more digestible, regurgitatable information as to how to regurgitate my last name, and they would still always screw it up. So it comes with the territory. I'm totally all right with it.
Well, hey, brother, let's get started.
Let's do it.
Welcome to Rochester Business Connections, powered by Balbert Marketing, LLC, where I get the chance to chat with Rochester, New York's very best business owners, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders. I am your host, Ben Albert. Don't forget to subscribe, and remember, we don't do advertisements. My fee for this show is simple. If you gain value from the episode, personally share with a friend and explain your favorite part. Let's get started. Welcome everyone to Rochester Business Connections. I am here with Kevyn Rustici. What's up, man? How we doing? We've been
Not too bad,
chatting.
Ben. Not too
Excited to
bad.
be here with you.
Very excited to be here with you. I had the opportunity to meet you and talked about this wonderful opportunity to come on here and talk to your guests and kind of promote what I do here local in the local area.
Yeah, and Kevyn, you are a human capital consultant for ADP. Ultimately, when I see you on LinkedIn. You're a great networker. You're great at building relationships. You provide value in LinkedIn with cool videos. You're putting stuff out. It's all interesting. But I'm curious in terms of your title, what the heck does that mean?
Yes, it's a wild title. So I am constantly fighting that stigma, Ben, of being labeled as a sales professional. I think as organizations, as people, they can always think back to either buying a car, buying a cell phone, a negative experience when buying something. They can be talked in or feel like they're bamboozled during that process of the sale. And there are a lot of sales tactics, and at the end of the day, it all comes back to human nature. And knowing that, I'm trying to shed that negative connotation and really pride myself on being a consultant. Because I think you're more advisory and you really take off whatever corporation that you're working for's hat, and you're really working for that individual and that company specifically. So I love human capital. I think it's an up and coming thing that some of the organizations and businesses that have put a lot of stock and weight into human capital are only now reaping the benefits even before the pandemic, and really helping them get that culture, that great place to work, that some corporations are really looking for, to organically bring in some of that talent as well. So I love being a consultant because, again, I think it's more helpful in trade, and allows people to let down their guard a little bit and really share some of those complex challenges that they're faced with.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like sales in this world is kind of a dirty word. At
Yeah,
at the
it's a
core,
four-letter word, right, Ben?
it is. I never thought about that. But when it comes down to it, when you're being a consultant, when you're doing something that's going to bring in revenue for someone and really help them and coming from a genuine place, it's
Mhm.
almost your job to be able to convey that. I don't think sales is a bad thing. There's
Mhm.
just that image of the used car salesman. So you're helping, is it small to medium sized companies? What do your clients look like?
Yeah, typically, so ADP is structured in such a way that we have target markets. So my target market is I would constitute probably as mid-sized businesses here in the local area. So focused on employers of 150 employees and up, and understanding that each small, medium, large size organizations go through their own growing pains. And identifying the real unique needs of that particular organization when it comes down to process. And a lot of times, I think what people look to do is to how to maximize the people that they have in the positions that they're in today, and not looking to add non-revenue generating positions, and making the people that are in these more operational or administrative roles more effective in their day to day. So I focus on organizations that either have an HR department or are running that borderline of finance, wearing the HR hat, and just bringing those teams together, as well as IT. Because again, at the end of the day, it should be an ecosystem where multiple parties are championing the particular project within the organization. That's really the only way to drive purposeful results.
Got it. Got it. So the company I run is tiny. I'm a sole proprietor, right? So imagine that a lot of the people listening, maybe they're employees or sole proprietors or new entrepreneurs. What
Yeah.
what are some of those first steps? What are the kind of things that you could help the little guy? Well, what should I be looking for when I'm scaling my business? And what kind of things do you help for businesses like mine?
I love this question. I actually just had the opportunity to talk to a gentleman who works in the RIT incubator center. And
Oh,
this is
great.
one of the questions that he came up and started asking me about. And really, if I was to put myself in your shoes or be that sole proprietor, is I want to start leveraging and thinking of ideas and ways that I can maximize the value of technology. I think technology at the end of the day, Ben, is really something there to help us with the day to day tactical work. Things that we really don't enjoy doing. If I have to rekey information once into multiple places, I hate that. I think you and I are very unique in our upbringing. We came from having the phones wired to the home phones that we were talking about earlier, wired to the wall, and then we went to a wireless phone at our homes, and then we finally got to the age of the flip phone, and then all of a sudden, then in 2008 we had smartphones. So we've really seen the benefit of what technology can do and what its purpose is. And I think that a lot of people fear technology because it's more of not the fear of change, but the fear of the unknown and the fear that they might lose control. So if I was to put myself into your shoes and really be an entrepreneur and starting my own business, I want to see what technology is available first that helps me execute my day to day. And then outside of that, I would really start looking at the contingent workforce. It's a growing, scaling need. I think COVID really expedited that process. Where now, if I have a particular marketing project, maybe I would just reach out to you, Ben, and contact and contract with you for a specific need or a graphic logo or website design. Do I need to necessarily bring in somebody that I add to my W-2 population? Probably not. And the same goes for bookkeeping, the same goes for sales, so on and so forth. Because at the end of the day, I want to make sure that I have the right people in the right seats and I'm maximizing my time because there's only 24 hours in a day, that I'm maximizing my time and maximizing my thus productivity at that point as well. So if I was to tell you what I would look at is really look and leveraging how technology, you can evolve with technology within your process, and then look for people outside of your organization, best of breed or
Mm.
industry experts that you could potentially contract with and not start paying their benefits and all that other fun stuff that comes with bringing them on as a W-2 employee.
It's great advice, Kevin. That was one of those experiences where I have my notepad here and I realized at the end of your statement, like I should have been taking notes. Why
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, put a pin in it. We can always come back to it later.
that's why I clicked record. So So, Kevin, I know from seeing a couple videos you've posted on LinkedIn that you are very data driven. What are some of the technologies you're using to
Yeah.
help, utilize in your work and help your clients?
Great question. And to kind of start with that answer is I have my degree in biology. So why am I so results in fact and data driven is because I'll blame Fredonia. So that upbringing, obviously, I saw myself potentially getting into healthcare. Because at the end of the day, what I really seeked most was to help others and develop purposeful relationships that you could continue to develop over time. And that's no different. So what I typically bring today is the scientific method to businesses and organizations. Now you've probably heard like the Six Sigma process and some of these other more business related terminologies. But at the end of the day, it's always starting with a desired end result and working your way backwards on how you get to that result. From a data perspective, data cannot lie. I think in some organizations and some conversations, they can paint this beautiful picture as to what's going on internally and why they have certain processes in place or checks and balances. But at the end of the day, I think that's like in some organizations, it's like trying to paint a pig instead of really seeing what they're missing with that's going on right underneath their nose within the organization, and really making more data-driven decisions or proactive decisions in real time. I think a lot of times organizations are more reactive in their approach and what they're doing on a day-to-day basis when they're developing that strategy. So the whole idea is to the challenge for a lot of organizations and the up and coming metrics that a lot of businesses are using are the business analytics. We've heard AI, we've heard Amazon Web Services, we've heard a lot of these terms out in the marketplace, but what does that really mean to a business? And first and foremost, it's how you're collecting that data, and are you doing it in an efficient way that now you can start making instances or saying like, hey, we just implemented this new rewards and recognition program. How is that impacting us a month from now, 2 months from now with our retention? Has that helped us from a recruiting standpoint? It just allows them to start seeing what's actually happening instead of trusting their gut and doing more gut reactions or reading something and saying, okay, I want to institute this because it worked for a Fortune 500 company. It's got to work for us, which is not always the case. And data will help really drive those decisions and really take our uh, professional opinion, to put it politically correct, out of that. So it helps engage, and obviously the catchphrases right now is diversity, inclusion, and pay equity, which I really strive and hope that businesses um, see the value in, because outside of productivity and profitability, which has been proven if they have a more diverse workforce, that is the case. But what other things can they start learning from their data, and how can they drive to be better?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, numbers, they say numbers don't lie, right? And we might be reactive. We might not understand the value of the data. And it's like taking that red pill. It's the matrix where you see this and you're like, oh, I need to change the way I look at data and change the way I, run my business. Now, when I work with someone like you, let's say someone, your clients, and they don't understand this stuff, they're starting to see the value, but
Mhm.
it doesn't really make a ton of sense to them. Do you what's your role? Do you get it done for them? Do you consult? Do you educate? What's your
Yeah,
role in the matter? A little
Yeah,
bit of
my role in the
everything, I
matter
imagine.
first, if I could break it into like a process, it all starts with a conversation first. So really sitting down. Now, if one particular department is feeling pain in one particular area, that's one thing. But usually, odds are, if the system or process is broken in that area, it's broken in multiple places. So first, I like to take that 30,000 foot view, Ben, of really what's going on within the organization. So I ask, and we'll tend to ask more open-ended questions to really start that open dialogue. Walk me through this process, or when this happens, what happens thereafter? Those types of questions allow me to really paint the picture as to what's going on today and where technology would fit in within that process, or maybe it's disparaging technologies because they chose the best in breed technology for a particular area or line item of the business. And how can we integrate then with that technology to really remove as much human interaction with data migration and movement as possible. I talk about that as the Sunday scaries. Usually, is what keeps people up at night. Removing those tactical burdens in the day-to-day operations, and then from there, once we've alleviated them and technically or ideally freed up their time, then we can focus more on the strategy. And once we have the technology in place, it's also pulling that data across from multiple business segments. So like labor cost allocation, scheduling, recruiting initiatives, onboarding, all those types of areas where multiple people within the organization are typically involved, and educating them on what they should start to do and what better looks like. And then once we've done that, then the fun part starts with the strategy perspective. Is like, what's working? What have you identified that's working today? Where do you think improvements can be made? How are you? How do you feel like you stack up against the local competition when it does come to your recruiting initiatives? I think that typical easy approach to organizations when they're trying to solve a recruiting issue is typically throw more money at the problem. Let's offer more money than our competitors, which is fine. But is it effective? Like, I always ask the companies, well, what's your first 90-day turnover? And if they have a high 90-day turnover, are they selling a false bill of goods on their career page on their website, where the employer or potential applicant feels like they're buying one thing and then getting something totally different? Or maybe it's they didn't focus in on that onboarding process in and of itself. And I think that when I talk about the digitalization of those types of processes, it's what other benefits from a strategic initiative can you start to leverage and now see again. I think, Ben, in most cases, people are so like down and their eyes are down because again, the minutia, the amount of tactical work that they're having to do, they can't possibly come up for air and really see the future or the light at the end of the tunnel. So that's what I strive to help organizations and individuals to start to see what better can look like and what the potential financial impact that would have on the organization. And that's a challenge that we face. I think finance, for whatever reason, I know you have a great professional background in and of itself. So do I. I've always seen finance treat HR like the redheaded ugly stepchild of the organization. Stay behind that black curtain, send me reports when I need them.
Right.
Let me know if you find a great applicant, send them our way, kind of thing. But just stay behind the curtain, don't come near my office. And I'm trying to change that mindset and that idea that HR deserves and needs a bigger seat at that executive table so they can execute that executive strategy, not only in the interim, in the immediate future, but also down the road, like a 5-year plan. So it's really closing that gap that exists. I think the scrutiny that people focus on the financial capital, that same energy and same methodology needs to be on the human capital side as well for organizations in order to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, you can train, you can hire, but really you're only as good as the people surrounding you. And that's HR's role, right? To make sure that there's toxicity in a company that they get out quickly and the people that come in are valuable and to ultimately continue to achieve, right?
Oh,
And
definitely.
I like to talk about Rochester. I want to dig deep into Rochester in a moment, but first I kind of want to just give you a soft little knock out of the park question, just in terms of, Rochester, what do you do for fun, man? What do you love about the city? What do you love about the region? Where would we find you on the weekend?
Yeah. So I'm not from Rochester originally.
Okay.
I actually am from Elmira, New York, which is a very small town. And then I actually have been up in Rochester now for almost 7 years. My great grandparents actually grew up probably less than a mile and a half away from my house that I live in today, out in Greece. But Rochester, what I quickly realized, it is the big city to me, coming from such a small town where there's actual traffic jams. Is that it is a very small but tight knit community. I think the industry or the saying goes that everybody's like 6 or 7 degrees of separation from one another. In Rochester, I always say it's like one or two. It's amazing how in lockstep that our local area is. And I say that too is that we're also a very philanthropic town, which I also enjoy. I think I read a stat that Rochester has actually the most nonprofits per capita in the entire country, and I think that just goes back to our philanthropic roots, where we want to help the community as a greater for the greater good of all of us. So. Where will you find me? It depends. Usually on the golf course because Rochester has a great golf scene. You can get to like 30,
Facts.
40 different courses within 20 miles of each other. So it's
Yeah.
awesome. It's awesome.
I love it. And to dig deep, and I don't even know where we're going to go with this because you're the expert, and I'm just asking these questions out of curiosity, brother. Rochester, I mean, it's incredibly diverse.
Mm-hmm.
The unemployment's kind of high, the crime rate's kind of high. It's a very diverse community. It's a growing community, but we have COVID throwing all sorts of curveballs at us.
Yeah.
What from an HR standpoint, what have you seen working with Rochester companies? What are some of the strong points? What are some of the struggles? And I know this isn't a directed question because I want to keep it open ended because I don't know, man. I'm curious. In your experience, have you seen issues with diversity? Have you seen racism? Have you seen, companies struggling to hire, people struggling to get jobs? What are some of your experiences in terms of maybe the hardships of Rochester with
Yeah,
those opportunities?
great question, Ben. And I think obviously we could probably sit here all day and talk about this one topic, but
Right.
a few things that I've identified is so I'm a part of the August group, which is a local networking group, which really focuses putting Rochesterians back to work. So I've really enjoyed that. So it's a local meeting place where there's about 2 meetings per month, but people that are in between jobs, were furloughed, let go, whatever it might be, to really start to leverage our own network. So I leverage LinkedIn because it is a social network, but I use it more obviously as a business related tool. But if I can introduce or make an introduction to somebody within my network for somebody else, why not? We're all in this fight together. We're all going through our own challenges professionally, personally, whatever it might be. So really coming together again as a community to get us back to work. Um, from a business side of things, I've seen this fundamental shift this year for organizations that are really trying to pull together their data and share and show that they are a diverse and inclusive culture that they've built, and that's a focus of theirs. I think some organizations do it just to check the box, while I think other organizations really are focused on making a difference and making a change. I obviously have access to a lot of data because ADP pays 1 in 5 Americans. I get to see
Right.
that gap in pay equity. And to say that I agree with it is not. I do the same role as any female would. And do I think that I provide more value than she would? No. But that again is what data shows and I guess exposes, if you will. And undoubtedly, I mean, yes, you're 100% right. I think our unemployment rate locally is a little higher than a national average. We saw a lot of companies locally, I think, go to seniority based off of tenure first to really quickly chop down on the operational costs of the labor during the pandemic and during the economic uncertainty. So that also allows us now here locally to have access to a labor pool, talent pool that's highly qualified that was not there before the pandemic. So it's also a wonderful opportunity for some organizations to maybe have access to new talent pools that were not previously there. To engage with those talent pools is mission critical because to your earlier point, putting the right people in the right seats is probably a more predictive outlook as to the future potential of that business and their human capital. So some organizations, because for the more blue collar jobs, it is a war. It is really a war. They're looking for any competitive advantage that they can find, whether it is the offering and the base rate or the base salary. Maybe it is thinking outside the box, which I love to do and talk from a strategic perspective. I've seen some organizations now offer sign-on bonuses because they've become so desperate. And that's why I always go back to if companies focus on their human capital as much as their financial capital, they would never have to worry about their finances to begin with. Because if you take care of your people, the people will take care of the business. And that one of my favorite questions to ask, Ben, and a great question for the viewers is: do you feel like the employer, that your employees are lucky to work for you, or you're so lucky to have your employees working for you? And it's a very big difference from a cultural perspective, because if you feel like your employees are lucky to work for you, it changes your whole mindset. It changes your outlook on that particular individual and how you view your employees. Now, if you have the opinion that the employees, you're so lucky to have those employees working for you, you're always going to do what's in their best interest. You're going to focus on the communication. You're going to make them feel like they're more a part of the leadership. And that's the biggest thing with the pandemic. Mark Cuban had a great quote that this pandemic will affect your brand as an organization for decades if you don't navigate it correctly. I think some did and some didn't, and we'll get to see what impacts that potentially has down the road for that organization.
I think it's a lot of important things you're saying here, Kevyn. The pandemic hit, and the best companies, the employees started taking leadership roles. They're like, we need to get through this. We're gonna plan. Is the moment they reopened, everything was to standard, everything was tip top shape, and they were ready to ultimately crush it. So human capital, define that for us. That's just the quality of the employees in your organization.
It's a very broad term, and same with integration is another very broad term. And it really, so human capital is the entire employee life cycle. So think about from the start of identifying the top talent before they're even a part of the organization, sifting through like the sheep to find maybe that one black sheep of the herd, to identify who has the potential to become a future leader. So talent identification is the first process. And that, again, back to capital, is there's a cost to that. Is it marketing dollars, or is it me going to Indeed and Indeed charging me for clicks on a post? And then how do I effectively, once I've identified the top talent and who I want to be a part of my organization, how do I bring them in the doors to now make them a part of my team or my staff? So then the onboarding process. A lot of times, a lot of businesses don't put a lot of weight into that or an investment into the onboarding, which is terrible, for lack of a better term, because that is their first opportunity to see what's going on within the organization without them physically being there. And I think that is even harder now because we are more digital. We are working from home. How do you effectively bring on that new employee and make them feel like they're a part of the team without ever stepping through your doors? So human capital as a whole, then you start talking about overtime and control of overtime. How do I control schedules? How do I prevent individuals from being scheduled for overtime when I have a bench of talent that isn't going to run the risk of overtime? So it's really using the tools, the technology, the people of today, and bringing it all together. Because one of my favorite things, again, to challenge financial executives on is, what is the true cost of turnover within your organization? Now, industry average will tell you it's 30% of their annual salary or annual payment. But that is only for blue collar jobs. So if you take the minimum wage, that's still on average about $6,000 plus to replace that individual by the time you train them, by the time you get them up to speed. And just think about how that negatively impacts the business from a customer service perspective. If you always have a new person every time your customer calls in that they're not talking to the same person, that deteriorates that relationship. And maybe that relationship goes to the wayside in 2 years. A fun fact is that if you can reduce your operational cost by 30% or 5%, it's like a 30% injection right into the arm from a profitability standpoint. So as revenues are down because of the pandemic, buyers have changed, their budgets have changed. Focus in on the operational expenses and where you can cut costs, because it's just like you just went out to market and increased your sales by 30%. So human capital, to answer your question in a long-winded answer, is very broad, and it can go in multiple disciplines and multiple areas. But it's really, again, bringing that all together and showing them what the true cost of turnover is. Because executive level turnover, as we all know, is about 213% of what you would pay that individual within that year.
Wow.
So it's not cheap. It's not, but it's about time that we started focusing in on our human capital, and that's when you start talking about culture and engagement. All those other items are important, yes, but they're only a piece to the puzzle. It's not the whole picture. So that's human capital in a nutshell, as to what my view is of human capital.
Yeah, I never really thought about, the cost of not, the cost of turnover, the cost of not keeping your employees and not bringing them into your culture and having them do well. Um, an analogy I've heard a few times is, let's just say his name's Bill. Bill makes a big error. It costs the company $15,000. He's afraid to bring it up, but he's, ingrained in their values. And he says, listen, Kevin, I made a mistake. It cost the company $15,000. I did this, this, and this. Obviously, it's not going to happen again, but I understand if you're going to fire me. And then what Kevin says is, I just paid $15,000 for your training, Bill. I just paid $15,000 to train you. Because think about it, you fire someone, the cost of letting someone go and bringing someone on that in theory could have made that same mistake themselves.
Mhm.
Yeah, our people are everything, man. Our
Yeah.
people are everything.
I
I
agree with that. Yeah, that's a great way to kind of tie a bow around it, because at the end of the day, is it's one of my favorite things when I'm challenging a business or an HR leader, is if I could tell you who your bad managers are as far as a turnover, what would you do with that information? And it's fascinating the responses that you get back. Some are like, "Oh, well, I would." Well, we've had that manager in that position for 15 years. They've been with us for such a long time, which is fine and well and good. But if they're costing your organization absorbent more money than the next best manager, or maybe it's an opportunity to create like a mentorship program internally.
right.
I think right now we have a lot of challenges in the workforce because of the multi generations that we have in the workforce, and different things motivate people in different ways based off of our past, and really the generations that we've grown up in. Now, my father, for instance, has never left his company. He's worked there for 30 plus years. He is never going to leave. But now businesses are struggling to identify what motivates a millennial and what motivates the Gen Z. And ideally, a lot of it comes down to communication and how are we communicating with those individuals. And really, what I found fascinating is the fundamental for any strong culture and engagement and reduced turnover is trust. So trust between peers, your direct manager, and senior leadership makes me as an employee more resilient, and it allows me to probably be a little bit more tenured in my approach to how I am going to be a part of that organization moving forward. Without trust, I don't owe you anything. Now, any opportunity that I get through LinkedIn or Career Builder or any of those sites, I'm going to start listening to those opportunities because I don't feel like I don't owe you anything. I have no skin in the game. But if there's a trust, there's that team component, I am more likely to stay with that organization moving forward rather than hear all the other noise that's going on in the market.
Trust is everything. Kevin, I have a million and one things to learn. I think we're going to need to do a part two. Just because, dude, we could talk forever on the psychology and the building of a culture in your organization. And we're going to do a part two. I want to move to the rapid fire round.
Okay.
Simple, short questions just to get to know you a little bit better.
Perfect. I'm ready.
All right. All right. Coffee or tea?
Coffee, black,
Black coffee, beer or wine?
beer.
What cats or dogs?
I was always a cat or a dog person, but my wife convinced me to get a cat. So I'm borderline. It depends. I think cats are nice. They're a little less work.
They are. They are. Are you a Android or iOS user?
iOS for sure.
We had snow today in Rochester, New York. What's your favorite season?
Summer. Not the winter.
I just had to bring up the snow, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't do anything with it, so that's probably why.
I like when people say summer, I like to follow up with summertime, hot day. You get an ice cream cone. What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh God. I mean, we got to go with Abbott's by the lake. My wife and I have a boat, and we used it this year. It's called the Dirty Oar, and Abbott's frozen custard. I would go with almond.
Yeah, that's my mom's favorite. Shout out to Abbott's. Shout out
Yeah,
to
there's a
Bill
plug for
Ray.
Abbott.
They I actually get paid $20 every time I mention them. I'm just kidding
Perfect.
with you. um,
Abbott's. No.
um, cool. Social media. Where should people keep in touch with you? Where are you most active?
Honestly, it's I'll tell you, the only form of social media that I have is LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn. Again, I spell my name with a Y, so I'm sure you'll be posting this on LinkedIn. So a great way
Yep.
to engage with me, and any way that I can help you and your viewers, you know where to find me.
Cool. Yeah, and that link will be in the show notes below. LinkedIn seems like it's your best method. Phone call, email, website. Is there any other good follow-up steps for people to keep in touch?
Yeah, if you're interested in continuing the conversation or just kind of expanding on that, is my mobile phone is right on LinkedIn as well as my personal email. So feel free to shoot me a note. And like I said, I'm here to help anybody. I don't hoard my time or only focus on ways that I'm going to make money. It's how can I help? So any way that I can do that, whether it's in putting you in touch with my network or just answering a simple compliance question for you, just know that you have me in your back pocket.
I love it. And no decision making confusion. You go to LinkedIn, you'll find Kevin there. He's a great networker there and you're always posting great content. So go like him, follow him, ultimately share this out. And Kevin, thanks for coming on. We really need to do a part two because I'm sure
Love
everyone noticed. You probably noticed I know nothing about this stuff.
it.
So I feel like I'm learning so much today. So I appreciate your time.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I appreciate the opportunity, Ben, and hopefully there is a part two. I'd love to continue the conversation with you.
Beautiful. Thanks for listening to Rochester Business Connections. Don't forget to share this, rate, and comment on your favorite platform. You can also email me, ben@balbertmarketing.com. Let's connect soon. Until then, keep thriving, everyone.